The day the court declared her unfit wasn't the worst day of Laura Jensen's life. That day came weeks later, on a random Tuesday morning, when her son Caleb, just 10 years old, looked her in the eyes during a court-ordered supervised visit and asked, "Mom, did you really try to hurt Dad?" She couldn't speak. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Not because she didn't have the truth, but because the lies had settled into his voice like they'd always belonged. Laura had been a mother before anything else. Before she became a marketing executive, before she started speaking at women's leadership panels, and long before she'd been reduced to case file #2193B. Jensen Laura E. She was a mother first. It was the only title that ever truly mattered to her. And that title had been stolen. Not just stolen, twisted. It had started quietly, as betrayals often do. Her ex-husband. 2 years had passed since Laura Jensen lost everything in the courtroom. 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases, 2 summers where she watched from a distance as her children, Caleb and Isla, posted photos from pool parties, school events, and family dinners with their father's new fiancée. Alyssa, the clinical psychologist who had evaluated Laura during the custody proceedings. The same woman who sat smiling next to Thomas Jensen, hand on his knee, while Laura was painted as emotionally erratic, overly attached, and suffering from untreated mood instability. The phrases still burned her ears at night. Clinical terms wrapped around a web of lies. But now something was changing. Laura had become invisible to most of the world. And in that invisibility, she had quietly become dangerous. It began with a banker's box. Inside it, Laura's original therapy notes from before the divorce, clearly outlining concerns about Thomas's control issues and repeated gaslighting patterns. Next, video logs from a nanny cam her lawyer had advised her not to submit at the time, afraid it might be considered illegally obtained. She kept them anyway. They showed Thomas yelling at Caleb over a homework mistake, grabbing Isla's tablet from her hands and slamming it on the floor. She watched the clips in silence. She didn't need to cry anymore. The pain had long been converted into focus. And then, tucked between old receipts and case notes, was a hard copy of something she almost forgot she had. The original custody evaluator's initial draft report. The one where Laura had tested within normal psychological parameters. The one that vanished the week before the final hearing. That report had a signature. And that signature didn't match the one on the final submission. She didn't go to the press. She didn't confront her ex. She didn't post online. Laura booked an appointment with Dr. Riva Amari, a forensic psychologist and court expert witness who had no affiliation with anyone in their previous case. Laura paid in full, no insurance. She knew she needed a clean file. Riva reviewed every document, every word. After 3 sessions, Dr. Amari sat back, eyebrows furrowed. "There's a significant discrepancy in the evaluation language," she said. "If I didn't know better, I'd say the final report was either altered or replaced." Laura didn't flinch. She simply nodded. Then she pulled out her phone. "I think I can prove it," she said, tapping on an old file transfer saved under a folder labeled Silent File. It contained metadata logs from the evaluator's assistant's computer, backed up automatically to a cloud Laura once had access to, before Alyssa took over the entire evaluation process. Dr. Amari leaned forward. "Laura, do you realize what you're sitting on?" Thomas Jensen was now a rising star. He'd been nominated for a Fatherhood Advocacy Award, praised for co-authoring a white paper on single fathers navigating custody challenges. His law firm had promoted him to senior partner. His smiling photo with Caleb and Isla, matching sweaters, forced smiles, hung in the firm's winter gala poster. The award ceremony was going to be live-streamed. He invited donors, judges, press contacts. And he invited Alyssa. Laura didn't RSVP. She had other plans. 3 days before the gala, Laura filed a motion to reopen custody proceedings based on fraudulent evidence. Attached, a letter of professional concern from Dr. Amari. A notarized affidavit from the former assistant who retrieved the original evaluation. Metadata logs. Audio snippets of private conversations between Thomas and Alyssa, ones that shouldn't have existed, let alone revealed coaching the children. The file landed on Judge Marlene Costa's desk, the same judge who had presided over the initial case. Laura had included a respectful note. "I am not asking for sympathy. I am asking for due process." Judge Costa scheduled a hearing. One day before the gala, Laura stood in court, hair pulled back, dressed in a muted gray dress, no jewelry, no theatrics. Alyssa didn't show. Thomas came with his new attorney, nervous, lips pressed tight. Judge Costa asked 2 questions before allowing Dr. Amari to take the stand. The courtroom was mostly empty. Just a clerk, 2 legal aides, and the low hum of a recording device. Dr. Amari explained the discrepancy. Then the assistant testified via Zoom. Finally, Laura walked to the center and took a breath. "Your Honor, the person you met 2 years ago was unraveling, not because I was unstable, but because I was being erased. Slowly, deliberately, and with professional assistance." She handed over a printout. It was Alyssa's LinkedIn update, from 2 weeks before the custody hearing, celebrating her new role supporting the Jensen family's private practice. Judge Costa stared at the paper for a long moment. Then she looked at Thomas. "This is enough for a full evidentiary hearing," she said. "And a report to the licensing board." Laura didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not her friends. Not her parents. She waited. Because she knew something was coming next. Something bigger. She hadn't gone public. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't screamed. She had simply let the truth move through the proper channels. But when the hearing date was published online, and the custody case was officially reopened, it reached the inbox of a junior reporter covering family law corruption. A reporter who had just been assigned to cover the Fatherhood Advocacy Award Gala. Thomas Jensen looked over his speech one last time, pacing across the hotel suite. The Fatherhood Advocacy Gala was more than just a moment of recognition. It was going to cement his reputation as a leader in responsible parenting. The invitation list had grown to include several local judges, state representatives, and even a featured journalist from the Sentinel, who had recently taken a sharp interest in family law reform. He didn't know why she was suddenly so interested, or why she'd requested a comment on his reopened custody case. He brushed it off. The case was a formality, he told himself. A bitter ex-wife's last attempt at relevance. Nothing would come of it. But Thomas couldn't sleep that night. Because Laura hadn't called. She hadn't posted anything. She hadn't protested or pleaded. She had disappeared from the narrative. And that terrified him more than anything. The morning of the gala, the Sentinel published a breaking headline. Award finalists' custody victory under scrutiny after evidence tampering allegations. The article was neutral but thorough. It mentioned the court's reopening of the case, the conflicting psychological evaluations, the reappearance of the original evaluator's assistant. It included a blurred screenshot of Alyssa's LinkedIn timeline. Most damning of all, a quote from Judge Costa. "When professionals compromise objectivity in family court, the consequences are generational." Thomas's phone didn't stop buzzing. Sponsors pulled out. His law firm issued a statement of review. The award committee tried to reschedule, but it was too late. The ballroom was already full, and so was the press gallery. Laura hadn't expected them. She hadn't told them about the reopened case. She wanted it handled quietly, without dragging Caleb and Isla through more courtroom trauma. But it was Caleb, now 12, who showed up at her doorstep with a backpack, hair messy, eyes tired. "Dad was yelling a lot today," he said. "He said you set him up." Laura gently pulled him into the house. "Did he say anything else?" Caleb hesitated. "He said he was going to lose everything because of a stupid file. Then he said he should have destroyed it when he had the chance." Laura froze. She knelt to meet her son's eyes. "Do you know which file he meant?" I think it was the one with the yellow tab on it. It had Dr. Amari's name on the cover. Her hands shook. That file was never sent to Thomas. Laura called her attorney, who rushed over. The backup file from Dr. Amari had been physically delivered to the court. Hand-carried, documented, time-stamped. But the judge's clerk called later that afternoon. Ms. Jensen, we believe the physical copy may have been tampered with. The file was found in a bathroom trash bin at the courthouse. Slightly torn but intact. Security cameras had no direct footage, but caught a tall male figure entering the record's floor without clearance. The timestamp, 3:12 p.m. Thomas had signed in for a coffee meeting in the building at 3:05 p.m. It wasn't proof, but it was pattern. And pattern with enough context becomes evidence. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Press, observers, legal aides from other cases. Some just wanted to see if the rumors were true, that a custody case once hailed as a model of fairness was built on a manufactured lie. Thomas sat at the defense table, face flushed, sweat at his temple. His new attorney looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Laura stood calmly with her lawyer, Dr. Amari behind them, and Caleb and Isla sitting quietly in the back, by their own choice. Judge Costa entered. Silence fell. This court has reviewed new evidence suggesting undue influence, document suppression, and misconduct by an officer of the court. Based on the credibility of the new testimony and forensic evaluation, this court finds sufficient cause to immediately reverse the previous custody order pending further review. Full physical and legal custody is hereby granted to the petitioner, Laura Jensen. Murmurs. Stifled sob. Laura didn't blink. Didn't smile. Didn't even breathe. She simply closed her eyes and nodded once. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court is referring the actions of Dr. Alyssa Kent to the State Psychological Board for review, and will submit a report regarding Mr. Jensen's conduct to the State Bar. Thomas stood, fists clenched. "You're punishing me for being a good father," he snapped. The judge didn't look up. "I'm holding you accountable for being a dishonest one." Outside the courtroom, reporters rushed Laura for comments. She held up a hand and said only one sentence. "I waited in silence because I knew the truth would speak louder than any lie ever could." Made the front page. The video clip went viral. Women across the country who had lost their children to manipulative custody battles began sharing their own stories. A local advocacy group named Laura their new ambassador for family court reform. She never sought the spotlight. But the spotlight found her anyway. 6 months later, Caleb and Isla now lived full-time with Laura in a small, quiet house with a bright blue porch and a rescued golden retriever named Theo. There were still therapy sessions, still questions, still the occasional angry outburst or confused silence. Healing doesn't happen overnight. But one night, after brushing his teeth, Caleb lingered at her bedroom door. "Mom." "Yes, sweetheart. That thing you said. About truth being louder than lies." "Yes." He smiled sheepish. "It really was." Laura didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, without a court, without papers, without titles or affidavits, she was no longer erased. She was home. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.